Everybody, welcome to Lisa's Art Room. Today we're going to varnish a porch sign for you, and I'm going to be using this Liquitex satin varnish, and I have a soft synthetic bristle brush, and this is a little bit of give to it, but it's fairly soft. And I have a tray in which to put my varnish in that's nice and clean and doesn't have any dust or anything. And I sanded this, and I've already put one coat of varnish on it, but I wanted to go ahead and do a second coat, and I just figured I'd take a second to show you how to do that. So we're gonna get started on that, and what I'm gonna do is first, you wanna make sure that your varnish is stirred gently. Do not shake your varnish. If you do, you'll introduce air bubbles, and we don't want that. So you can take your top off and just put a paintbrush in there or something, and just give it a little stir. Just don't introduce any bubbles. I've already done that, so I'm not real worried about it right now. Sometimes I will just, if I've stirred it pretty recently, sometimes I'll just lay it on the table and just roll it back and forth a few times to mix it up. And that's a gentle way of doing it so that it doesn't introduce air bubbles. You just don't want to shake it up. So make sure that your area is dust free when you do this, and that you have a good light source. You need to have a good light source. I usually have a flashlight just in case, because you're going to want to see where the varnish is going. And a lot of times just having that glare from the light will allow you to see that much better. So that's what we're gonna do. So let me just take a second, and I'm gonna adjust the camera so that you can see a little bit better, and then we'll get started on this. First thing I'm going to do is pour some of the varnish out into my tray. And I try to pour the right amount that I'll use for the project. Sometimes it's a little hard to guesstimate, but try to get somewhat close, and you can always add more if you need to. If you see any lumps or anything in there, that means that your varnish is not stirred properly. Get something to stir this with. And you might want to stir it up just a little bit more, just real gently. Just make sure that everything's mixed up, especially with the mattes. What happens with the matte varnishes is they have basically additive in here that makes it matte. So they tend to kind of settle at the bottom a little more than I would say the satin does. So if you find that it's starting to get a little bit thick on your bottom, just make sure that you stir it gently for a little bit, just to make sure that it's all mixed up. Otherwise, you'll end up with either more of a glossy finish on some spots and more of a matte finish, and it'll just be uneven, and you don't want that. So make sure that it's nice and even if you can get it. Try not to introduce air bubbles. Don't stir it so hard that it's bubbling up on you. Just a gentle stir is usually sufficient. I keep a wipe handy just in case I have any messes. And I'm just going to pour a little bit of this out. It looks a little bit better. And we're going to start on this end. I start on one end and I work my way toward the other end. And I want to see where I'm going, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start here, and I'm using this light to see where the varnish goes, because you'll see it'll look shinier. So I just lay my brush in there gently, trying not to introduce bubbles, okay? And then I start on the end. And you can go either way at first. I always go one way at the end. So sometimes I'll put it on sideways, and then I'll go one direction all the way across, okay? Now only do this like once or twice. And if you look at the light, you can see where it's hitting, okay? You just want that to blend in, and you can't go back over it. So try to get it completely covered all in one time, because otherwise, if I was to try to go back over this and say as early as even 20 seconds, it will have started to set up, and it'll just mess it up. It'll pick it up, it'll get all globby, and you'll have just a mess on your hands. So you always want to get your varnish down like one and done, okay? And then work your way down. So if you can see where I've gone, and then you just blend up into that area. Now I'm kind of lifting as I go. And I do my edges too. And I always do the end. I've already done the end, so I'm not really worried about it. But I do the edges as I go, just to make sure that there's no little runs along the side. So, and you just keep working your way down. I just keep moving my chair and looking where I'm going. So I'm looking at the reflection on that, seeing where the varnish has been. And this is a very easy way to see where you varnished. And then I just blend up into the section before. And I'm just lifting it slightly at the end. Okay, I usually only go back and forth like once, because it sets up really fast and you just don't want to go back over it. That's the biggest thing I can tell you. If you've missed a spot, just leave it. Just leave it, let it dry, and then come back after 3 hours and hit it again. Because if you try to do it right now, it's going to mess it up. You cannot go back over it once it starts to tack up. So just leave it and come back to it. And then just do another coat. But try to get it in one. And that's why I like using the light. So if your light source isn't strong enough, you can also use a flashlight. I will just hold a flashlight like this and look for my glare. And you can see where you're starting and stopping. So a lot of times I will take a flashlight and hold it as I do it. If my lighting's not good enough and I just can't see that edge, and then I'll use that so that I can see where I've gone. And that works very well too. So that's your two options. Usually as long as you have a good light source, and at the end of it, you'll be able to see where you've gone and you'll be fine. So just go over it. We're just gonna keep working our way down. And I just move my board down. Don't move it so far that it gets top heavy and falls off on you. But I'm just gonna keep going. And you can see, I like to go crossways first, just because I can see that I've got the edges completely, and then I go up. And that's just the way I do it. You can do it either direction, it really doesn't matter. Just make the direction at the end all the same. You know, whatever your last stroke is, keep that the same on each little section. And I'm holding this down so it doesn't get top heavy. And I'm just leaning down and looking at the glare of where the gloss is, and that just helps me to see exactly where I've gone. You just work all the way down. Watch your edges for drips. Almost down to the end here. And if you start running out, you can pour a little more in there. I'm getting a little bit low. So I'm gonna pour some more in there. And it doesn't take a lot to do your coat. You don't want your coat so thick that it's runny or it's puddling or anything like that. You want a nice, even, thin coat. And like I said, if you ever miss a spot, you're going to be tempted to go back up and hit it. Don't. Just don't do that. It will never, ever work right. Okay. Now just keep moving down so that you can lean down and see where you're at. You know, if you have a nice sunny spot, you might can do this, you know, outside. I don't like to varnish outside because there's bugs and, you know, more dust, things like that. So I typically will only varnish inside in a controlled setting. I can use either an artificial light, or I can use light from the window to see. Okay, and then on this part, I don't want to go this way because it's going to put a puddle here. So you don't want to do that. You can go ahead and hit your end there. And then just your last one, you want to go off the edge. So, and just go real light up here so that it doesn't leave the brush marks too much. And it will settle in a little bit, so you don't have to really stress about it too much. It will settle. And that's it. That's your coat of varnish, and you just leave that on there and let it dry for 3 hours. And then once it's dried for 3 hours, you can put a second coat. Okay? So that's how you do that.
After letting it dry for about 20 minutes, it's now dry to the touch. And as you can see, the finish has a nice even shine. You'll need to wait about 3 hours before putting any additional coats of varnish. Okay folks, that's it. That ends the tutorial on varnishing your wood surface. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, please make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thanks so much for watching. Please have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.